Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to those of you who have been registering and attending our On Point webinar series. Today, we're joined by Susie Davis, Vice President of Treasury Management, who will be discussing, as the title says, the hidden value of Treasury Management, unlocking the value of your financial resources. I'm Kirsten Petras, Executive Sales Director here at Oak Street Funding, and I have the pleasure of leading our sales team as they work with borrowers like yourself who are strategically using debt to grow their businesses. I'm happy to welcome again Susie Davis. She's joined us in her role, and she's here today to help us gain a greater understanding and shed some light on what exactly is Treasury Management. How can cash management processes tailored to your company help your company? As a courtesy to the other attendees, your phone lines have been muted, but we welcome and we encourage questions. We have received several questions that we'll be answering today over the next 30 minutes and anticipate that some questions that cannot get answered given time constraints will be answered personally by a member of our team after today's webinar. Please do use the Q&A interface on the screen to submit questions during this time. This meeting is being recorded, and within the next couple of business days, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to today's webinar recording and our contact information if you actually want to continue the conversation. Susie, welcome. It's my pleasure to share the screen with you as a member of our team here at Oak Street Funding, coming to us by our parent company, First Financial Bank. Susie, several people here joined because they want to know more. And so I say let's get right to it. A question that was asked a number of times by today's registrants is simply, what is Treasury Management?
I think the misconception is that Treasury Management and cash management are terms that we're not already all familiar with. And very simply, you as individuals have bank accounts. And so we do for businesses what individuals do on a personal level. It's just a bank account for your business. More specifically, Treasury Management, cash management is maximizing your working capital. So we want to speed up your receivables. We want to get you paid as quickly as possible while that money sits in the bank until you have to pay it out. We want to invest. We want you to earn interest on it. Make as much money as we can on your money before you pay who you need to pay. So then we want to slow down your payables so that you have your money in your hands as long as you possibly can. And very simply, that's what Treasury Management is extending the process as long as possible so that you get to hold on to your money as long as possible and make money on it.
Do Treasury Management clients take advantage of other services within the bank, like credit card or some other account offerings that might be available to them?
Absolutely. So Treasury Management products very basically consist of ACH. So when you payroll your employees, that's an ACH. You'll be getting an ACH from a vendor. So ACH, wires, bank accounts, those are all the basic Treasury Management functions, but we do also offer corporate card program, and we do partner with a third-party vendor who offers our merchant processing. So that's when one of your clients swipes a credit card for your services, we also have a product that we can offer there as well.
So why would you say, you gave a great overview, thank you for that. I hope that's clear. A little bit more clear of a picture of what we're talking about today, the overall cash management, optimizing your own cash position to gain as much interest as you can while it sits in the bank, and then strategically time your payables, payroll, invoices, what have you, so that you, of course, are staying current, but keeping that average balance as high as you can there in those accounts.
Absolutely.
But why is that important? And is this new?
This is not new. So the concept of Treasury Management or cash management has been around forever. And it also varies, based on your needs, which we can get into a little bit later. But it's not new. I personally have been in this similar type of role for the last 9 years roughly. in banking almost 20 years at this point, and the concept of this is not new. I think it has become more forefront to people's attention as technology over the years, becomes more sophisticated. We have the ability to automate things that we didn't used to be able to. So you used to do more checks, less ACH, less wires, but kind of as time has gone on, we're focusing on a more automated process. People are doing more online. Your online visibility to your accounts is becoming more sophisticated. I think it's just something that over time has become more important and more easy and more attainable.
So in your role and the members of your team, as you work with your clients, you work directly with our Oak Street clients, which is amazing because our clients are across the country and different sizes of businesses have different banking needs. What are you largely responsible for on behalf of the client?
So on behalf of my client, I am responsible, or your banker, whatever bank you bank with, should fully understand your business. Who's paying you? Who are you paying? What are your goals? Are you trying to have as little cash as possible sitting out there? Your banker really needs to understand your business and understand your goals. And I personally have worked with clients very, very simple to very complex. In my time in this role across various banks, the type of client I work with could not be more different. And the great thing about First Financial Bank, who I work for when I work with Oak Street clients, is we're a small enough bank that we can still offer the comparable products to your larger, more national or global banks. But so we're big enough, we're big enough that we can offer those products, but we're small enough that we have the ability to offer a level of service that you're not going to be able to get from a larger bank. So it's kind of a sweet spot that I'm in because we have the ability to bank any type of client. We have some clients with one account, very low balance, very low money movement needs, and we have product sets geared toward that type of client. And then we have clients with multiple accounts, multiple $1 million, very complex needs, all the way up to international wires. And we also have the ability to provide a product set that works for them, and therefore everything in between. So even if you started out, at a very basic need, as your business grows, we have the ability to grow with you and support you in that.
Well, and that's a lot of the reasons clients choose to work with us is not that immediate need, but that ongoing growth that's occurring. I can think of an example of some of our borrowers who are growing through acquisition, and in acquiring all of these businesses, they're also acquiring basically multiple banking relationships. And so the time comes where a full assessment of the best way to kind of tidy up the balance sheet, formulate a single point type relationship with a banker, which is different than working with a lender, but with that banker becomes a critical part of their strategy, to the very first question that was asked, to optimize that cash management. Kind of transitioning to some of the questions that were submitted about cyber activity and fraud, and you mentioned about the evolution of technology and that being a key driver to people doing more and more with cash management and treasury management. Fraud is top of mind, and whether they're concerned about clicking a link in an email from a stranger, or that there are many people, multiple people in their office that are helping pay the bills, have access to that bank account, whether it's by logging in or grabbing that old 3-ring binder of checks that we used to all have to have every day. We're seeing a lot of opportunity to protect oneself more and more from fraud. What are you seeing out there in terms of the data, first of all,
Sure.
About the regularity or the occurrence of fraud? We hear a lot of headlines, but there's an everyday heartbeat across this world of transmission of dollars. So what are you seeing data-wise about fraud? And then what activities or cyber vulnerabilities should people be aware of?
Sure. So as Treasury professionals, we here and then, across all banks, we pay close attention to the AFP. It stands for Association of Financial Professionals, and it's a Treasury-driven publication, and they put out surveys every year. They survey clients much like yourselves, and the most recent data we have is that 80% of financial professionals have reported some type of fraud. So the highest instance is in check and email fraud, and then ACH just by nature you're not going to see as much fraud, but it's out there. I personally, have clients that deal with it. Luckily, we have things that we can advise you, whether it be, as Kirsten was mentioning, internally, don't share passwords, don't allow your employees to share IDs and passwords or sign in under another employee. We do have products available to help. We and all banks generally have products available to help with check and ACH fraud, where we give you the opportunity to approve whether a transaction is legitimate or not. And I've had that product save many of my clients, and I recommend it 100% of the time, regardless if there is an immediate need, even if it's a low transactional account. It's something you need to be thinking about and be aware of because, it's out there and it's scary.
So you recommend a particular product to all clients that you think is valuable regardless of need. Talk to me a little bit about how you get an understanding of the actual client, and then some of the ways that they may choose to protect their business accounts from fraud.
Okay, so the two main types of product that we can protect are check and ACH. So if you have accounts where you're writing even one check, you really need to think about it. But if you're in a scenario where you're writing a bunch of checks every month and you want to have the ability to open up your email the next day and have, the bank has said, hey, somebody, John Doe tried to post this check against your account. Is this legitimate? And then you have the opportunity to say yes or no. That product, most banks call it positive pay. We call it positive pay for both ACH and check. You're basically just giving us a list of the transactions that you have approved. And then when those items start to hit your account with us the next day, if it's not on that list that you've provided us with, we will come to you and say, did you write this check for this amount to this person? If you did, great. They send it on, it's gone. But if you didn't, you have then just saved yourself from fraud, because people get a hold of bank accounts. It's not just people getting a hold of your check stock. All somebody needs is your routing and account number, and they can falsify an ACH. They can make a fake check and try to deposit it through your account. I see it not often because most of my clients have these products in place, but we see it more often than we should. And it can be devastating because trying to recover funds in a scenario where we don't have those products in place, there's a short time frame and it can be difficult.
So you mentioned that you put this kind of two-way communication back and forth with what checks are being written to. And I have to admit, when I first heard you say that, I thought, that sounds awfully cumbersome. But as you wrap up what you were just saying and answer that question, there can't be anything more cumbersome than trying to contend with a fraudulent activity that is, you're just watching the money disappear out of your bank account. Because I think what we can all agree on is when you hear of these stories happening, which are incredibly unfortunate situations for business owners, it happens so fast that the only option is to freeze accounts. And we know several of our borrowers and business owners, they're relying on those accounts to make other people's pay. If that account's frozen, how are they making payroll? If that account's frozen, how are they paying the rent? If they owe a client back something. So good point that while at first I have to admit it sounded a little bit much, in the end, I think the alternative is could be catastrophic. It's certainly in terms of the potential financial loss. Well, without their banker, like you know, what is something that you see are best practices for operations to help contend with fraud issues internally?
Sure.
Somebody's question was basically, is there something I can do immediately to prevent this from happening?
Sure. So taking, products and solutions out of the picture, you always want to, as I already mentioned, secure your IDs and passwords. Don't let your employees share IDs and passwords because we see a lot of internal fraud that happens that way. Reconcile your bank accounts daily. Look at your bank accounts every day. And if you're seeing something funny, tell your banker right away, because that, again, gives us the short window that we have to work within to try and recover funds. We need to know as soon as possible when you see something that's not right. So make sure you're doing that. Have a separation of duties in place, if at all possible. I know some smaller offices, that's not necessarily, possible, but if you can, have one person initiate a payment and another person approve it. Because we have seen scenarios where one individual employee had the ability to both initiate and approve a wire to themselves. It was gone and there was nothing that could be done. So just make sure, even if you don't have, specific fraud bank products in place, that you're doing these things to keep yourself as safe as possible.
Very, very good tips of things that they can manage and control themselves, and maybe even implement a policy today. With that top of mind, and your comment is, your conversation here today is very much indicative of the deep relationship you form with your clients. And I think several business owners don't have that kind of relationship with a particular banker. So, they may be going into a branch and there's familiar faces, but even if that's who you go to that branch, get to that familiar face, and tell them what is going on so that they can help. My team here, our Oak Street Lending team, they have the pleasure of working with you every single day. You assist a lot of our borrowers across the country, and most of them, as I mentioned earlier, may be growing through acquisition, and they're finding themselves with bank accounts all over the place, and they need to take a pause to get with yourself or someone like you to take a look at that balance sheet, figure out where things are in terms of multiple accounts, tidy it up, optimize the cash. You provide a really one-on-one experience for the client, almost concierge level service, which I think everybody should be expecting, but maybe aren't fortunate enough to have. For those clients you work with that are part of our team, can you explain, from meeting that client, the onboarding process for them?
Sure. So when I work with Kirsten's team, we generally have an existing loan or a new loan client that we're working with. You do not have to bank or have a loan with Oak Street to bank with us. They are not mutually exclusive, but I'm generally brought into the process very early, when the loan is getting started, which is nice because we're often able to leverage the same documentation for both the loan and the banking products, so that we have to ask you as few questions as possible. We're always going to check with each other before we ask you for information to make the process as smooth and easy as possible. So it starts with a meeting. We speak to understand your business. I want to understand, your flow of funds, what your goals are. And then once we agree on a proposed account structure, I have a team, a person who does my documentation, and once we have the information we need to get you up and running on the banking side, she creates documents, sends them out. Within usually 24 hours of getting signed documents back, we have accounts open, and then usually within 1 to 2 days after that, your services, your online banking, whatever your cash management service needs are, we have those up and running. And then at that point, my team and I do everything we possibly can to make a transition if you're moving banks, or if you're starting brand new, anything you need, an ACH letter, for your payroll company. If you need a bank letter, saying your bank account and your ACH information, we do everything we can to make your life as easy as possible and not disrupt your business and get you moved over to us. And then from that point forward, I am your contact. I'm your only contact as it pertains to banking information. Well, Crystal and I are, but you're not calling an 800 number. We do have a service team that we have to leverage in some, like resetting a password, for example. But anything else, banking account related going forward, you have two individuals you reach out to, and we are always reachable. And I don't think, unfortunately, that is the case at some larger banks. It's just not possible. So that's one of the great things about being here, is that we're able to provide such a level of service beyond opening the account.
So everybody's made to kind of feel like that big fish in the little pond, so to speak. Does the onboarding process for banking accounts and their needs there interfere with the process of them actually getting the loan funded?
No, not at all. As I mentioned, we try to leverage as much information as we can on both sides to get it all in one fell swoop. And then I have found that when we have a global relationship, when we have a loan relationship and a banking relationship with one client, that just makes future needs more easy. It's more efficient. It's more smooth. We already know everything about you, and less stuff is required to when you deepen that relationship down the line, because we already know you so well, and we know that you're a trusted partner and we're a trusted partner to you. And it really only makes it easier if we have the global relationship.
So, recognizing again that we work with businesses of all shapes and sizes, what's an example of maybe a more simple relationship that you might have with a business?
Sure. So we have some RIAs who are just starting out, have either split off from an existing agency and starting their own, or just starting out, period. And we've got several that are just one account, low funds, low money movement needs. So we're happy to start a relationship with them because we can help them where they are right now, but then we can also help them as they grow. We can transition things over the years. If your business becomes, larger as you grow, we can support those needs because we have a product set that bridges the gap between, I don't really need much right now except, online banking access and ACH to pay my payroll, and I might write a couple of checks, all the way down the line to, vast needs.
So we have borrowers who have relatively large operations. I'm thinking specifically in our insurance vertical, we have some relatively large insurance borrowers who do a lot of agency bill, and that to me means a lot of cash management. How is a relationship too complex? How can you help those that do have multiple sources of cash coming into their operations where they're needing to maybe even aggregate it and utilize systems and processes that you've seen work, or an example of one?
Sure. So we have many of that type of client that you referenced specifically, and nothing is too complex. We have a lot of products available to us that we can tailor to very complex needs, multiple accounts, cash concentration, we have it all, and we have the ability to meet you where you are, wherever you are in the process. And our client base really spans the whole, from very simple to very, very complex.
So one of the questions that came in was just about the cost of the services. I would assume it varies based on the degree of the relationship. So how are costs for treasury management services calculated?
Sure. So yes, it does vary. If your needs are more simple, we have a product set that is geared more towards a small business, And those fees are obviously going to be less than the other end of the spectrum where we have a full-blown cash management, very we have product options that are very automated that take a lot of work off of you and do the work for you. So that it really does vary. But one of the things that you'll find at this bank and at most banks is when you have accounts here and you hold balances, you're paid interest on your balance to help offset the fees. It's called earnings credit, and most banks do that. Some of the smaller banks don't, but most larger banks have that. So it helps to take the weight off the fees just by having your balance sit here. We pay you some money on that account while it's running fees, and that helps offset that.
So your resume includes spending quite a bit of time at some of the larger banks, national, international banks. How do the cost structures of First Financial Bank look in comparison to those larger banks?
Sure. So I did work at a larger bank, and seeing bank statements day in and day out, I'm familiar with a lot of the larger banks as well, even though I didn't work at them. We come in 25 to 50% less than most larger banks' fees. And I can tell you from personal experience that our capabilities are on par with a Chase, with a PNC, with a Wells.
Well, we've had two other quick questions come in, if you don't mind, and we are actually coming up on the half hour. If I don't work with Oak Street and I'm not by FFB, what should I be asking my banker for help with? So
it depends on your needs, but I think that everybody should have a bank where online capabilities are available. You would think that everybody does, but that is not the case. I have some clients who bank with smaller community banks and they don't have online capability. It's very important that you have visibility into your account every single day. If anything, just from a fraud perspective, you need to know what's going in and out of that account. I think it's important that everybody, whether or not you choose to have fraud products in place, at least be aware of them. See if your bank offers them. That way, if you ever get to the point where you have a situation like that happen, you know what's available to you. And secondly, on that, I would make sure to ask your banker, what happens in a situation where I have fraud? If I don't have products in place on this account to protect me from that, what happens? Am I going to have to go through a process to recover funds? How long does that take? Et cetera. I would be asking those questions first and foremost.
Well, I know personally, as do almost everyone on this call, has a credit card, a debit card, some sort of card access to all their money, and you'll get that 800 call and you're not sure what it's about and you happen to answer it, or maybe unfortunately you don't answer it, and it's the fraud department calling to let you know that your number's been compromised. I mean, even as consumers, that's something we should be paying attention to, mindful of, and paying attention to our fraud department. It feels like it can become a huge annoyance, but the fact is these departments are there to help us keep our money in our bank accounts and out of the hands of people that almost seem daily trying to get at a lot of innocent people. Last question is, if I'm not an Oak Street borrower or a First Financial client, but I'd like to work with you, can you work with me?
Absolutely. We are not limited by any state. I believe the follow-up to this call, my contact information will be provided. So we are able to bank in any state in this nation. You do not have to be an Oak Street loan client. If you have any questions or want to have a conversation, don't ever hesitate to reach out. Even if I can't help you for whatever reason, I'm more than willing to be an advisor and let you know what you should be asking your bankers.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank all the attendees for their questions. These were great questions. Our plan was for this mysterious process to be a little demystified after today and have a better idea of what treasury management, in quotes, is really all about. And from what you shared, whether it's simple or complex, it really sounds like everybody has to play an active role in their own fraud protection and prevention, both internally and externally. And our borrowers, should expect a pretty high level concierge type service, actually, when they get a chance to work with you. I know my team members greatly enjoy you being a member of their team and see the value, certainly as it does help our borrowers, in some cases, bring a level of sophistication and protection to their business. And whether they're funding loans for acquisitions or it's our MGA clients or any of the clients we serve, I think they have benefited from you being part of that deal team. So thank you all today for getting to know Susie and what her offerings include. And join us for our next Oak Street Funding On Point webinar series in September. And everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.